Okay, so this video is going to be showing you how that you're going to put all of this information that you've learned together. So I'm using my OneNote, and I'm going to use my inking feature in OneNote. However, typically you're going to be doing this obviously with paper and pencil, but I just want you to be able to see it really easily. So this is a song, How Can I Keep From Singing? So imagine that you're in your class and I pass out a piece of music and I say, we're going to write our solfege into our music. And I tell you your voice part. So in this song, you can see that the instrumentation, the texture of this piece is there's a part 1, a part 2, and a keyboard. So you're going to know which part you're singing. So for the purposes of this one, I'm going to say that I'm a part 2. I always like to write that at the top of my music because I think it's really helpful to remember, especially when we're standing in different places and things like that. You really want to know that you're a part 2. And since we move around with parts a lot, it's important to know that. The first thing I like to do when I'm working on a new piece is go through my music and mark all the lines that I'm going to do. So you can do that with a highlighter or a pencil or a star or anything you want to do. I typically just like to kind of circle the very beginning of each of the lines that I'm going to perform. So once again, it'll tell you on the very first system what part is what. So you can see here, this says part 1, this says part 2, and this says keyboard. The music's going to follow that same pattern unless there's kind of some new notes in there. So you can typically know that it's going to be like, this is going to be part 1, this will be part 2, and this will be piano or keyboard. So I'm going to continue with that pattern. Oops, I said I was a part 2. That was wrong. Part 2. Part 2. And I'll just stop there. That's plenty. Okay, so once I've marked through the whole song, you're going to be ready to write in your solfege. I'm going to use a fun color. Okay, so I'm going to zoom way in so you can see what I'm working with here. So the first thing you're going to do is locate that key signature. My key signature has 1 flat in it. So I know when there's 1 flat that it's the last flat. And I know that the last flat is fa, which would mean that this note right here is a fa. If that's a fa, and I'm looking for my first note here, I'm going to have to go down my solfege scale. So sometimes I even like to write them in to make sure I don't skip any notes. That's a fa, that's a mi, that's a re. So this first note is a do. It doesn't matter to me if you write in the whole solfege syllable like do, or if you just write the first letter. For me, I've worked with this a lot in my life, so I know how to just read. I know that D means do, and then if I have special solfege, I write the whole word. But if you're just first getting used to this and you haven't worked with this very much before, it might be easier for you to write in the whole word. So I've got my first 2 notes. That first one's a do, the next note is the same note, so I know it's the same. Here I'm going to go, okay, this is a do, so this would be a re, so this note is a mi. Mi. That one's right below it, so that would be a re. Here's a do, and I can double check that it's a do because it's the same note there. Now this one's a little bit harder because I have to go below the staff. So I'm going to make sure that I count really carefully. This is a do, ti, here's a la. Now, we've talked about this with rhythm before. Do you see how there's a tie right here between these 2 notes that are the same? We treat that as 1 note. Now, if you have a slur that goes from 1 note to a different pitch, then you don't treat it as 2 different pitches. But since these here are on the same line, we're going to treat it like 1 pitch. I'm going to delete some of that stuff just to make it look a little bit cleaner for you here. There we go. So that one's a la. Again, I don't need to write anything on this note here because it's the same. Okay, so here's my la to get to the next note. I know the next one would be on the ledger line, la, so this one is a fa. I've got the same thing happening over here on this note with the tie. That's a fa, and I can see that I used this la, same note before, so I'm going to make sure that I know that that's the same as the note I saw before. That one's a la. Okay. Checking this that I'm staying on my same highlighted line. You can reference what you did before. I always think it's a good idea to just double check that you're in the right spot on your staff. So I always, when I start a new line, I just do the same process. So I check my key signature. I'm still in flats. I still have 1 flat. I know that my last flat is a fa, fa, mi, re. This note is a do. That's a do. One above it would be a re, do. I notice that I have a tie there. I treat that as one note. Right below la is so. So again, treat it as the same note. You can see here what I was talking about where it goes to a different pitch. So that's a fa. I'm going to count up from this one. So that would be a so, la, ti, do. Just like in math, you can see that I have to show my work a lot. It really helps me to write on my music like that. You can always go back and erase if it's bothering you that you have those notes in there. But for me, it's just a good way to double check because I don't want to get onto the wrong solfege because it'll mess me up for the rest of the song. So that's a do. This would be re, re, do. This is treated as one note. Same thing, treated as one note. Okay, again, just always checking that I'm on the right line. One of the common mistakes I always see, and I always think this is like a crazy mistake to make because it's really obvious to me, but you guys, this always means piano. We talked about that in one of our lessons before when we talked about the staff. This is the grand staff and it's for piano. So I have a lot of students come up to me sometimes and they say, oh, am I supposed to do this note or this note? And I'm like, you're in the piano part, right? So make sure that when there's no words, you're in the piano part. Okay, that's a big way to know. If there's no words, you're in the wrong spot. Okay, your vocal lines will always have words. All right, so I'm back up here. Here's my fa, mi, re, do. That's treated as one note. That's also treated as one note. Treated as one note. Okay. Another question that I have students ask sometimes is they see notes like this and they say, why is it upside down? The note's not upside down. That's just the way that stems work. Typically, if you have any notes that are above this third line here, we will do a stem down for those notes. And if you have any notes that are below, we'll do a stem up. So the stem isn't important. The rhythm isn't important, whether it's a whole note or a half note or a dotted quarter note. It doesn't matter. You're really looking for the placement on the line. Okay. So I would just continue that for the rest of the song, and that's how you write your solfege into your music.